Greetings and welcome back to part 2. We, in the previous video, showed you and explained you this, the original manuscripts translated into English from the Kitab Ashrat Lashana Atika Supriya, translated into English by native-born Aramaic speaking Mesopotamian Victor N. Alexander. This is his down site that we revived. Okay, what he did with the original manuscripts, he had in Bible format. You can see him reading from on his video. Put in YouTube search the Aramaic scriptures, it should come up with a video saying Adam and Eve, incorrectly put even. Yeah, but don't let that worry you so much. And you'll see a elderly gentleman reading from what looks like a Bible, right, and talking about this, the Brita, basically the same, right, information in a funny sounding language. That's the original Aramaic, because he, the Lashana, Atika, etc., whatever he details on that video, because he found a way to revive those scriptures, right, a dead language. He found a way, realised it was simple to do it that way, probably because they had a modern vernacular or something. I don't know. You have to email him and ask for the details on that. This is just what we've come to understand from what out of the horse's mouth, you could say. Okay, so he, as we did, talks about the Brita, or creation, and that's the real name of the book of Genesis. So, right, we're going to jump again to another person who, like Victor and Alexander, managed to get hold of the original manuscripts, hidden and preserved, never tampered with by the original Church of the East, founded by the original disciple Thomas, possibly Peter, Addai, and Thaddeus or Jude. This is a website by Andrew Gabriel Roth. Okay, keep in mind that this is the Syriac, the Aramaic, the Eastern Syriac Peshitta. Okay, so for this naysayer that said it doesn't exist, etc., etc., there is no manuscripts, well, eat my shorts, because here is a picture of one of those original manuscripts. Okay, and this website features the holy Aramaic scriptures as preserved in the ancient Eastern Aramaic text of the New Testament in manuscripts, such as the Yonan Codex, the Khabouris Codex, the 1199 Horton Codex, and the Mingana 148 Codex, for you to read and study, given as literal as possible a rendering of the holy biblical text in a fresh, accurate, and literal English translations. So here's the Syriac font. Okay, here's it in English, and what he's done so you could learn Syriac is put the meaning of the words in English next to it, okay, wherever possible. Shalom, peace. We usually say that in our introduction. From Allah Abu, and here it says God our Father, and from Maran Ishu Mashika, our Lord Jesus Yeshua, the Anointed One, or Jesus the Christ, Jesus the Messiah. Okay, very different from the Lishana Atika Supriya, right? Kitab Ashrat, because this is the derivative, the modern version of the Aramaic, right? Because this Victor N. Alexander, when he was translating using the Syriac, was met up or was approached by a high priest of that original church. He said, what are you doing? He says, I'm translating from the Syriac into English for my friends, etc., and others who are interested, right? He says, okay. So he came back and he says, no, what are you doing? Oh, I just finished it. Maybe the New Testament or something. Going to work on the Old. He says, now why did you translate it from the Syriac? He says, oh, because blah, blah, blah. He says, well, it's actually wrong. You should have translated, I think he said it probably more nicely, from the original, which was the Kitab Ashari or Ashrat. So he goes, oh my gosh, I have to do it all over again. I'm so old, whatever, right? I'm little, not that great in health, maybe. This is what I'm going off from his website, etc. So he worked on it anyway, because he believed that if he passed, as we all will once someday, that somebody might pick it up from where he left off and continue his work and finish it. I'd like to do that, but in the email I asked him, can I learn the Aramaic, the old ancient Aramaic? and do that for you. And he says, well, in all honesty, you Westerners pick it up is very hard, so just trust his translation. So that's what I've been doing for these last 3 or 4 years since I've stumbled across it and communicated with it through email. Okay, so this Andrew Gabriel Roth is translated it much like Victor N. Alexander does, without the prejudice bias, twisting it, adding his own flavour and opinions and stuff. You know, he's translated it from the original Eastern Syriac Peshitta into the nearest possible English that he can, right? Staying faithful to what these original manuscripts, texts, scriptures actually say. And these little books here. And he makes a little statement. And there's one statement that's missing, but you can find it in his ebook on this, as we mentioned in other videos. Text. The Aramaic text used to translate here at the AramaicScriptures.com is from the Eastern Aramaic manuscripts, such as the Kabul manuscript, pictured above. So that's a manuscript, very old manuscript, right? Not a copy of copies, right? Or some English version. The Kabul manuscript, it being a handwritten Eastern Aramaic New Testament, said to have been scribed in the ancient city of Nineveh, and which is thought to have taken place sometime between 800 to 1000 AD, and said to have been officially certified by a bishop of the Holy Apostolic Catholic Church of the East as being a faithful copy of a much older Eastern Aramaic New Testament manuscript, likely scribed during the mid-5th century. Okay, so it was later. So this Victor N. Alexander has got the 2nd century one, right? And he's translated that from the original Kitab Ashrat into English, and also the Galilean Aramaic New Testament. Disciples, he's translated into a Bible format and called it the Disciples New Testament. Okay, you got the Aramaic New Testament, which you have a copy of. Okay, so he's translated this Eastern Syriac Peshitta, which in turn itself was a faithful copy of that original Aramaic New Testament, probably Victor N. Alexander's 1st or 2nd century one, believed to have been produced in the ancient city of Edessa in the late 1st or early 2nd century, as we stated just a minute ago. A number of Eastern Peshitta manuscripts have been examined for this translation. This is what Andrew Gabriel Roth has done, as well as the BFBS UBS text of the 1905-1920 Aramaic New Testament, which is said to be a critical text of about 70 to 80 Aramaic manuscripts. So there's heaps of them, consisting of both the Eastern and Western versions, and also the 5th to 6th century Aramaic manuscripts housed in the British Museum, numbered 14,470, 14,453, 14,473 and 14,475. The manuscripts consulted for the actual translation are various 5th to 6th century manuscripts, like the Goodspeed MS 716, manuscripts number 17 and number 54 from St. Catherine's Monastery, and that's what the Passion of the Christ was based on. Her vision, right? Her passion, right? What do they call it? Something like the Passion of. It's had another name to it, I can't remember what it was. Dolores Passion, I think. Yeah. Maybe it was this lady Dolores' vision, not so much St. Catherine's, but maybe it was found there. And the scenes of St. Catherine, you know what, on the Passion of the Christ, where Mary drops the handkerchief, or Christ, somebody gives him a handkerchief and it drops on the ground and she picks it up. Yeah, okay, that's Mel Gibson, being Orthodox Catholic, and the other guy Jim, playing Jesus, yeah, putting there a little bit of Roman Catholicism in the Orthodox Roman Catholicism, according to this Dolores Passion. Go read up on that, on the movie, right? And what it was all really about behind the scenes. Okay, so where were we? Okay, the Ionian Codex, 8th to 9th century manuscripts, like the Paris Syriac 342 Codex, 10th to 11th century manuscripts like the VAT 510 manuscript and the Kabul Codex, pictured above. 12th, 13th century manuscripts like the 1199 AD Horton Codex and 1261 AD Syrian 9 Codex manuscript, And lastly, the 613 AD Mangana Codex, which is known as the Textus Receptus. Okay, it was written in Greek, probably Koine Greek, of the Eastern Aramaic New Testament, or maybe actually this is Latin, which means the received text. Okay, of the Eastern Aramaic New Testament. These were carefully compared with when a scribal mistake in one of the manuscripts was made, while making certain that all the original Eastern readings were present in this English translation, as preserved by the Holy Apostolic Catholic Church of the East since the time of the Apostles. Okay, and there should have been a piece here where the head patriarch, Ma Isa Shamun, he's taken it out for some reason, or it's been taken out, whatever, that testifies that they were, given the manuscripts by the founder of the church, Ma Thomas, his blessed hands, whatever, and they were hidden and preserved for 2,000 years from the Roman Catholics in Islam. He just wanted an end anyway, and and he testifies in 1957 that they weren't messed with, as does Victor Alexander and of course Andrew Gabriel Roftu. Okay. So they were preserved by the Apostolic Church, Catholic Church of the East since the times of the Apostles, wrongly called the Nestorian Church. They had another history of that church. They said that Notorious had a falling out with somebody else over the hypostasis. They claim that, with the belief that Jesus the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, was both God and man. He was divine and human. So they split, or Notorious split, and they were erroneously called Nestorian Church because they agreed with what he said, but they did say, well, we had that belief way before that guy came along, right? We admire him, we honour him, but we're not basing our church on him, right? So they split, etc., etc. They had some disagreement with the Roman Catholic Church ideals, etc. Okay, and they basically stuck to what they believe the original disciples were taught, seen, heard, and taught and done, right? The traditions, customs, etc. over the centuries, and they've stuck to the manuscript. They've never messed with it in any way, right? Unless, like here, the translator finds there's a mistake. It should be pointed out that the Aramaic language is an older sister language of the Hebrew. That's the ancient or very old Hebrew, not this Israelite Hebrew or this modern Hebrew. A Semitic language, it means that they're like a mixture of different peoples, right? That's why you've got the Ethiopian Jew, the Asian Jew, the Indian Jew, etc. Don't fall for the 12 tribes of Israel chart, the Hebrew Israelites, etc., etc., because as we have proven through a documentary by Dutch Jew, what's his name? Simcha Jobovich, who went looking for the lost 10 tribes with a white Jew, a Jew from Israel, right, who confirmed all these people that they came across, Asian, Indians, etc. They were making the traditional matzah, unleavened bread, etc., and doing all these other traditional customs, etc., rituals, whatever. And he's remarked about all of them, who the heck taught them that? How do they know that? The only way they can know that is if they were of those lost tribes. Okay? And they asked those people, who taught you this? And they said, well, we don't know. We've just been doing it for centuries and centuries. Okay? So they were considered by both of them, especially the guy from Israel, as true Jews, the lost tribes, etc. Because there was no other way in heaven or hell that they could be taught that, right? That they could know that, unless it was passed down. So it should be pointed out that the Aramaic language is an older sister language of the Hebrew. a Semitic language of the Middle Eastern region of the world, which it is very close to in its construction, alphabet and vocabulary. Yeah. But over time they've modified it, not having vowels, only consonants. They added vowels, dot system, etc. Excuse to make it easier for others to learn, to be able to read, etc. Whether they're right or wrong, you have to prove that. Okay, so yeah, when they did that, it not only changed the structure, also changed the meaning of the words. So now they have similar words but different meanings. Yom and Yuma. Elohim, Elohim, and the Hebrew Elohim, Elohim. Two different words. There's the evidence there. Okay, so please note the Aramaic text is read from right to left, like the Hebrew language. Well, we have a book called Wunderstein's Culture Far Plan. It's a chronological timeline of history, and it actually states in there, or somewhere else we found online, states that maybe they're just Jewish people or something like that went to Egypt. The Egyptians had this style of writing. They may have had a language, I'm not really sure, I can't remember exactly what it said, but there was a problem there, and these guys used to trade with them and all that sort of stuff, so they got along. So these guys might have been looking for an alphabet, and then they went off, they picked up some form of language from the Egyptians, exchange, etc, etc. So these Egyptians were, say in a sense, affected by or inspired by these people's language, so they changed theirs from a Semitic style to something else. They went from left to right. When they were writing it from right to left, it suddenly became left to right, or they were writing from right to left and it became left to yeah, whatever. They changed it. Right? So it went from right to left, being right to left, or left to right, or vice versa. Okay, the book is around here somewhere, but we found this information online somewhere, so you hopefully didn't confuse you there. Okay, interactive text. The English translation presented here can be verified in its reading when you click on the study tool at the start of each book, where you can examine the actual blah 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 like that. Okay. And study tool, transliteration. Unlike most other English translations of the Aramaic scriptures, it was decided to make a very literal and faithful rendering into the English language, as Victor E. Alexander did. It states on his website, and what we've gathered from communicating with him via email. Unlike most other English translations of the Aramaic scriptures, it was decided to make a very literal and faithful rendering into the English language. So that means he left out his own personal prejudice, bias, need to twist it, add flavour to it, much like Victor E. Alexander stated, right? Which is not only a translation of the Aramaic words into English, the Syriac, or keep in mind it's the Syriac, right, the modern form of Aramaic, the derivative, words into English words which mean the same thing, but also to give the actual Aramaic words themselves in many places as they read in the Aramaic language, rendered in English letters, which is called transliterating. In this way, for persons, places and things, which are the most often mentioned, you can become acquainted with the actual Aramaic words which are used, and also see what they mean in the bracketed portion, just following the original words or phrases. So he adds the Syriac font, and then he adds the English, he adds the translation, then he adds the words in brackets, as we mentioned earlier, so you can learn it, right? You can also see what they mean in the bracketed portion, just following the original words or phrases. These transliterated words are phonetically rendered into English characters in as simple a way as it could be done. This transliteration is thus a tool to help you learn the Aramaic language as you read through it. Okay. The English transliteration you are reading here is rendered straight from the Eastern Aramaic New Testament manuscripts. No Greek or Latin sources have been used, and no Western Peshitta. See the difference here? Okay. There's a word up here, Peshitta. Peshito. Okay. It's indicating that it's different, possibly. Western Peshitta readings have been used. This English transliteration is as literal and faithful to the Aramaic source text as could possibly be, while still being readable, understandable in the English language. So he's verifying you again that he's bypassed the Greek in the Western Peshitta. Some Aramaic idioms are retained, while others which are not very understanding in English or might alter the clear meaning of the text are rendered in a dynamic equivalent translation which gives a sense. Because the Western Peshitta, supposedly there's American missionaries, etc., that tried to translate the King James using the Syriac, right, from the King James into Syriac, and botched it, and so forth. Okay, so it's not a very trusted version. Maybe influenced by the Greek, Latinized Greek or something like that. Don't know, haven't really read it. They may say, oh, yeah, because it's full of errors, contradictions, corrupt or whatever they relate to it. Okay. So also many other Aramaic English translations produced during the 19th to 21st centuries have been checked, consulted to see how they render. So probably looked at naysayer, what's the other ones? Yonan, and so forth. Okay. They've been checked, consulted to see how they render the very difficult passages. Prayer for wisdom is always made to God for guidance, and so forth. Good idea. It is asked that anyone who might see anything that needs to be corrected, please do so. We can have the words as perfect as possible in the English language. So he's open to that. This transliteration effort was begun in 2010, and it's hoped that by 2017, God willing, it will be completed as an online edition, with printed editions available when everything is done and looked over carefully for any mistakes. I guess that's his Aramaic English New Testament, which is quite thick and lengthy. It's quite good. I haven't bought it, but there's a guy called Dylan Downs, I think, that has, and so forth. And I think he likes it, maybe likes Lamsa. Okay. He's pretty okay with Victor N. Alexander's. Has his different viewpoints and stuff. The English translation portions found herein are under copyright law, blah blah blah. But you can't use it, right? You just can't change anything without his permission or whatever. Okay, they want looking for someone to do the audio and so forth. Testimonials. Anyone can put testimonials up saying how great it is. You post your own, get it off Fiverr for a few bucks, right? But take this guy for his word. There's some audio down here, well, there used to be, that you could listen to and stuff. Okay, there's the picture of the original manuscript again. The Khabouros manuscript is displayed in the Book of Books exhibition in 2013. Open pages contains the text of Acts 2:118 through to 2:44. Okay. So it's gone. This website's gone through quite a few changes, taking out that testimony by the then head patriarch of that church in 1957, Isa Shimon. Okay, so here's a video of Victor Alexander. Right, we've done a video on this. So listen to what he says. We asked the guy, the naysayer, what language is he speaking?
Hello, this is Vic Alexander. I've been translating the scriptures for 15 years. I've already completed the New Testament and published it. And now I'm doing the Old Testament Commentaries. So today I'm going to start with the book of Genesis. And I'm going to pick on one concept only, and that is the creation of Adam and Eve. So I'm going to read from the Saprabrita, which means the scripture or scroll of creation, which is how we call Genesis. It's also how modern Jews today call the first book of Moses. They call it Brashit. So I begin from Ipaliun Elab, chapter 1, verse 1. Brashit bara alaha yatshmaya uyat ara. Barid alaha is also means son of God. And Brashit means at the beginning, before the foundations of the universe, This term I have done a whole tape on just this one word. Brashit encompasses the whole scriptures, because bara is light, bara is sun, brishit means at the beginning, at the head. It has a lot more meanings. The word just made up 2 letters, beat, uresh, that is B and R, has vast roots and meanings in the language. So I won't go into that this morning, because I have done it already. I'm just going to go on with the other verses regarding Adam. Brashit, bara Allah yat shmeya yat Aram. Shmeya is heaven and Aram is earth. Because there was nothing at the beginning, there was no time or space. So he created everything, time and space. And now I'm going to go and read from the book of creation, the story of how Adam and Eve were created, how humanity came into being. So I have published this book. It's Genesis, and there is the symbol of Allah Ashur, which is the symbol of God or the Godhood. Ashur with the sun, the wings of the Holy Spirit, and the Father in the bosom of the Father. So it's Ashur is the symbol of the Son, which is Isham Shicha, Jesus the Messiah, prophesied thousands of years before the scriptures were written. So I use this symbol because this is not a pagan god, as some people seem to think. And I even saw a program on television that said that, something about...
Okay, so he spoke a funny language, right? People go, that's not the Syriac, he's not speaking the Syriac, because I went to Bible college, I went to seminar, I learned it all. He don't know rubbish, he's saying this wrong, that wrong. But what they don't realise, because they haven't studied his website, they haven't communicated with him long enough, is that he translated from, I guess he has a, so look, see if we can see where he's reading from. I'm going to go further. Reading from a
I'm going
Bible
to
format.
Go to John chapter 1 verse 1.
You can't see it.
In the beginning of creation, he also starts with Brashit. There was the Milta, or the manifestation. And that Milta was with Allah. That manifestation was with God. In Greek, they use the word logos. Logos is not accurate. Because in the 3rd verse, Allah said, let there be light, and there was light, etc. And then he...
Trying to find where he actually speaks the language, so you can hear it.
Because Mari Allah, the Lord God, had not yet brought the rains upon the face of the earth.
Okay, back to the beginning here. Try.
Old Testament Commentaries. So today I'm going to start with the book of Genesis. And I'm going to pick on one concept only, and that is the creation of Adam and Eve. So I'm going to read from the Saprat, which means the scripture or scroll of creation, which is how we call Genesis. It's also how modern Jews today call the first book of Moses. They call it Brashit. So I begin from Ipaliun Elab chapter 1, verse 1. Brashit bara alaha yat shmeya yat ara.
So you heard him say something in a funny language. People think, he's reading the Syriac. That's not the Syriac. I know it better than him. I went to Bible college seminar, university, got a degree, all that sort of stuff. But what they don't realise is that they've learnt the modern Syriac, okay, which he started to translate when he first did his translation of the supposed original manuscripts, right, into English. Told by the priest, well, that's wrong. It's the originally it was the Kitab Ashret, Lishana Atika It's a prayer that he's talking about. Okay, so he is translating from this Bible format that he's got down here. You can't see it. You may see it somewhere in the video. It's quite an old book that he bought off that high priest that he was talking to, apparently, and he's translating from that. He found a way to revive the dead language of the Kitab Asheret, or the ancient or very old Aramaic. So he's not using the Syriac. This is what people got to learn, okay, and realise. Stop that rubbish, saying that he's reading from the Syriac and you know better, when he's a native-born Aramaic speaker, right? And he's found a way to revive that, and that's what he is doing, using that revived language to translate that revived language from the original manuscripts. If you've got a problem with it, you need to go and get hold of him. There should be a somewhere around here you can get hold of him. Just click on one of these, and these replies, and probably here somewhere, not really sure. He has an email address. If it's one you can get hold of him in, ask him questions, right? He's a great older guy, and he will answer those questions, any questions you have, if he finds the time to get to you. He's probably not going to answer you if you're an idiot or a troll or something like that. I wouldn't either. But yeah, you can confirm that what I said, or what we said from the Ministry of the Real Truth, is that real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth from the horse's mouth itself. Okay, but this is a problem you've got to try and get hold of. Okay, but that's all over to you. Okay, so that's one. We looked at Andrew Gabriel Roth's one, and now we're going to add the real kicker. Okay, this is the one we told the naysayer to go and look at, comment, put his comments underneath, and ask this guy questions, because he's the professor with 2 doctorates, PhDs in Aramaic and the Hebrew. He has his slight differences, but he's a good guy as well. Gets a bit haughty at times, but he's cool, right? Okay, sometimes you can take text or comment one of 2 ways. So here's a lot here. Okay, it goes by the name of Bible Perspectives. So we asked him a lot of questions. Okay, other people gave him crap and said that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, so I finally got the link to the roundtable discussion with him and Andrew Gabriel Roth. He says he's done that video with him, that debate, and he's also met Victor Alexander. Didn't really give much of a view on how he felt, but yeah, that's okay. Okay, he doesn't agree with Vic's translation, etc. But I asked him a question about the Hebrew Israelites, somewhere down here, when they say the name of God is Yahoo Washi Washi or Woo 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 or whatever. Are they right? And he says, he thought I was playing games. And I reassured him, no, I'm not. I'm asking you a question. Okay. Are they correct? I know that they weren't. Okay. They weren't correct, and he says, what the hell is that? It's not even in the Hebrew. So they're just making it up, which verified, right? Exactly what I had realised. They're making stuff up. I'm not sure where it is. No, not there. It's further on down here somewhere. Where's this thing? Maybe it's further up. Not really sure. What is it? Okay, so where is it? Okay, got a question for you. Do you think that the translators like Alexander Victor Alexander, who speaks the language natively, have had that natural Eastern mindset and know it better than you, even though you have perhaps Western awarded doctorates. As I noticed, many say this and that, like Dylan Downs, who doesn't know Aramaic fluently, George Simmons, who says he went to university, etc., and another guy, and they know better, that Victor Alexander translate the Aramaic wrong, and they both think they know better, etc., even better than you. Okay, he says it's not that simple. If the native speaker is objective and is ready to put aside biases, which Victor N. Alexander has stated that that's what he's done, and Andrew Gabriel Roth, they put aside biases, and if they have studied thoroughly the subject matter, then they have an advantage. However, many have strong biases and interpret based on traditions. Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's what Victor N. Alexander avoided, because he saw that all the other people who had translated it using the Syriac had botched it. And upon the advice of that high priest, no, it came from the Ketav Asherit, so he should be translated from that, right? Okay. So yeah, he's right in his statement, saying doctorates by themselves only mean that one has gone through a long and extensive discipline training, and are no guarantee of accuracy by themselves. Motivation means a lot. He doesn't really care about the names, degrees, etc., but his belief, right, in the Christ. Okay, there's a few more comments here somewhere that we've put up. There's another guy that's poo-pooing him. So he affirms here, yes, you are referring to the Aramaic Syriac used in the Gospels. It is closely related to Galilean because of the assimilation by Assyrians in northern Israel and the captivity of Israel into Assyria. Yeah, well, that's when they were Babylonian exile. Okay. Know if you are referring to modern Assyrian or Neo-Aramaic. The modern version. Yes, I am referring to the Aramaic Galilean in translation to English by Mesopotamian Aramaic speaking translator Victor N. Alexander. I have found a lot of Assyrian churchgoers on YouTube use Maria as well as Isha Yosha. You quoted, if you don't know or understand the idioms used, you don't know the Bible as well as you claim, right? Correct, see? So I wasn't trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. It was actually correct. So this is a source, right, that I go to ask that very question, to verify it for all of you out there. And those naysayers that say, I'm lying, or I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? Okay, and I put here, you have many doctorates that you worked and earned to obtain, so I respect you as an expert. Like the judge, blah, blah, blah. I went to a court session one time. Okay. And he tells me about, he used the actual Aramaic in the Peshitta with his students. And then this guy's giving him crap. Okay, yeah. I don't see this one where about the Hebrew Israelites. Seems to have disappeared. I can't see it here. I'll show more replies. So, okay. Might be quite a few. Where he actually verifies that they're making the name of God up. Yahoo washi washi, Yahoo woo woo woo, whatever. To verify for my video that I did. Okay. Ask him about Victor N. Alexander and Andrew Gabriel Roth. He doesn't agree with this theory of the Aborigine. He has his opinions. I'm trying to find this one on Hebrew Israelites to verify that they're making this stuff up. I can't seem to find it here. Can't seem to find it. Let's further up somewhere. Looking for something else. You get no idea where it is. More. Could be something. here somewhere. Anyway, yeah, it's on my video about the Hebrew Israelites, I think. I'll be here all day trying to find it, I guess. Anyway, so you can put the link to that video to see that we verified that they actually are making the names of God up. Because I can't find it here. Probably went past it, didn't even see it. Oh, here we go. I just started getting hassles on YouTube from a member of the cult in the US, the Black Hebrew Israelites, who think they are real Jews, but just read about them being a group created by a Negro in the 1960s. And I don't speak Hebrew like he does. I'm a Gentile, or Caucasian, or white. And he starts throwing racist slurs at me, etc., who have been proven and deemed by the Jews in Israel as nowhere near like Jews, lost Jews, etc., because if you don't follow those old Jewish traditions and customs, you can't call yourself a Hebrew. Like the ones Simcha Jobovich discovered and proved to be a Jew, or Jews, who was lost tribe of the Jews, who was tagging along, proved to a Jew who was tagging along. They were as they cooked a certain religious meal, exactly as they do in Israel, with no help or hints. I believe that this guy's stuff claims about me to be biased, prejudiced, even racist, as I'm not worthy to be in his club. I'm not allowed to play in his clubhouse. As I think I mentioned, I'm sick of the fluff and hype, lies, deceit, tricks used to try to get you to church part with your cash. BS told us, sold us as the gospel truth, real truth when I'm finding it isn't. So I'm seeking out the experts like yourself amidst the wannabes. And here's a quote by Bart D. Ehrman: "The truth may take you somewhere you really don't want to go. Probably lead you to atheism. Same white people trying to push their sect, cult, organised religion, etc. down your neck." That might be them, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay. Yeah, because they're saying Yahoo washi washi washi. There's actually one like that. I don't want to spend not too long on it, where they're saying that that's the name of God when it isn't. He says, "What's this rubbish?" Okay. Yeah, don't really want to do it. I'm not be looking for it forever. But he does get a bit hoity-toity. He says, "Frankly, you have been exposed to a lot of superficial and even very misleading information. There are many churches that use Aramaic. Syriac is merely the Greek name for a dialect." Yeah, see this here? Minus the A, the IC. Say like you got Pacific, Asiatic, etc. Or Syria. Right, it's N suffix, which is a loan word from the Greeks and the Latin, which means that they were the possessors of that particular language, right? What did he say? "Frankly, you have been exposed to a lot of superficial and even very misleading information. There are many churches that use Aramaic. I'm getting my information from the Eastern Church of the East, the original Church of the East. Syriac is merely the Greek name for a dialect of Lishana Aramea. That's in the Syriac, right? That is spoken in many New Eastern areas." Well, I asked a Syrian that was protesting against ISIS or the Taliban at that time, going into Syria and kicking the Syrians out of their house, etc. Right? And taking over and giving them crap on video. Right? Recorded live. Recorded, right? The Chaldean church and the Assyrian church is split. Yeah, apparently. Ask Vic, Alexander and Andrew Gabriel Roth any questions pertaining to them. That's what I do, if I can get hold of them. I haven't got hold of Andrew. As for me, this guy here stays away from church issues, etc., etc. Right? So yeah, we'll leave that because I can't find that one on the Hebrew Israelites. I'm dwelling on it too long. And their claim that God's name is Yahoo Washi Washi, Yahoo Woo Woo, etc., when it isn't. There's Victor Alexander's theory on the Aborigines, which he doesn't agree with. So I don't want to dwell on this anymore. There's been too much time on this one thing. Okay, so here's his round talk, conversation or debate with his debate with Andrew Gabriel Roth.
Welcome, friends, dear students of Israel Bible Center. Welcome to
this guy. I think he is the one that states he was a preacher for 30 years, and then he read the ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian myth texts, Enuma Elish, Epic of Gilgamesh, or whatever, and that changed his mind. He converted to ufology or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. Okay, there's Andrew Gabriel Roth, and there's the professor. Okay. Andrew Gabriel Roth, Dr. James De Francisco, and Dr. Eli Lorzinkin Eisenberg. I don't know if it's this guy. It might be someone else that's talking with them on it.
Roundtable Talk series. Today we're privileged to have Dr. James De Francisco, who is founder and president of Milta Ministries. You will hear from him very, very soon.
Yeah, maybe not.
We also have the privilege of having with us Andrew Gabriel Roth, founder and president of One Faith, One People Ministries. So today, at the initiative of both of these gentlemen, and really
doesn't he look like George or Friends?
Conversations, I think.
Seinfeld?
At the invitation, I should say, I wanted to bring up a question of Aramaic background of New Testament scriptures, and this whole discussion of the importance of New Testament Aramaic and Syriac witness. So I'm wondering if I could start perhaps with Andrew Gabriel Roth. Andrew, tell us the way you see it. Why would any Christian at all, from Eastern, Western, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox traditions, be interested at all in any questions having to do with the linguistic Aramaic background of New Testament?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I mean, for one thing, Aramaic is the native language of our Savior. We call him Yeshua, but known to the world as Jesus Christ. We need to start with the fact that Jesus and all of his disciples, including those who wrote about him, were native Aramaic speakers. Okay? Luke may have been very talented as a bilingual Gentile, but still very strong in Aramaic, as is very clear from his writings. And the other thing I'll say is, in the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 19, we read that the place where Judas died was called Akeldama, which is a thoroughly Aramaic phrase. That is not a Hebrew name, which means field of blood. And it says, and this was in the language of the locals of the country. So right there in the book of Acts, we are told that the people in Jerusalem were native Aramaic speakers. So that's one piece of it. Now we can get into a whole extensive discussion about how for the past 700 years before that, Aramaic became the main language, not the only language. Hebrew was still important, but one of the main languages, particularly for the poorer people, for the fishermen, for the people that followed Messiah, were more fluent in Aramaic than they were in Hebrew, and they became disciples, and they wrote their own books. But also, it's important because it's an ancient witness. As I often like to teach, Eastern languages go east, and Western languages go west. It's not that the Greek isn't important, the story of how Paul took the New Testament to the Roman Empire is very important. I wouldn't take a thing away from it. But we need to remember that Peter went east. Peter had a 14-year head start on Paul. Peter outranked Paul, and Peter founded more than twice the assemblies or churches that Paul did. And that's a story that needs to be told to give the full ancient support, Eastern and Western, for the environment through which the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, for the environment in which those writings emerge. You can't tell this whole story without telling the Aramaic side of it too.
Okay. Thank you. James, go ahead and just tell us your initial reaction to a very simple question. Why is Aramaic studies important?
Yes, I believe it is extremely important for a variety of reasons, including those that Andrew just mentioned. I'd like to start, though, with a comment right from your own book, The Jewish Gospel of John. On page 240...
You're a man after my own heart.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't resist. You say, sometimes I wonder how many things we miss by reading everything in the Gospels through our universal lenses of generalization and premature application, page 240. And you're talking about the Lord's Prayer there and the kingdom coming to Israel. This morning I was in a meeting with a class with an Orthodox Jewish rabbi and a Greek Orthodox linguist, and we've been studying Hebrew for the past 3 or 4 years together, and it's amazing the nuances of meaning that comes out of the Semitic languages that are totally missed when someone reads an English translation. Nothing new to either one of you. I know both of you have to talk about yourselves. I've had many students, I asked a class on last Saturday, I said, you've been studying Aramaic for a while, tell me some of the benefits that you've received. And those benefits are all over the scoreboard. Some of them make comments like, well, I've learned nuances of meaning, such as the phrase where Jesus tells the rich man that it's easier for is it a camel or is it a rope to go through the eye of the needle. Well, if you translate that as rope, a large rope, then you're pulling the strands apart. It's very much in context with the rest of the story. And these kind of things have enriched people's lives in terms of practical value that they would otherwise miss. I had an elder many years ago who was in the church for a long time. And he came up to me after a sermon one time and said, I've never understood that text before until you explained it today. And it happened to be a different text. But this has happened numerous times when people study the nuances, whether it be Hebrew or whether it be Aramaic, that they totally miss in the English or even in the Greek. And it's also much more fluid. So there's hundreds of nuances and in some cases differences in translation where you could compare a Greek text or a translation with the Aramaic. In my case, I use the Peshitta primarily. And then in addition to that, picking up where Andrew talked about the Aramaic being the lingua franca, from around 800 BC until 700 CE, when Islam ruled much of the Near East, Aramaic was the primary language of the people. And when Paul brought his messages into Asia Minor, and especially into Greek city-states, there was a large emphasis on Greek in that area. And in the Western world, because of the Persian Empire being separate from the Roman Empire, and then later the Islamic people, the Muslims, being separate from the Holy Roman Empire, you have a whole lot of Christianity that was separated from the Western world. And this is very vast in its richness. So the value there is tremendous.
Yeah, James, I really don't know if you know this or not, but you probably do, coming from Aramaic background. But when I was looking for a doctoral thesis to write and to defend, I very unexpectedly stumbled on Afrahad. And so my studies, this is the 3 or 4 years that I spent actually reading, studying Syriac and reading Syriac, and with Afrahat as a 4th century contemporary to John the Golden Mouth, who was in the west, and he's in the east, and I was fascinated by one particular thing, and this is in particular characteristic of Afrahat, maybe Ephraim, because of the century, which is the 4th century, is there. I don't know about Ephraim. Actually, haven't studied Ephraim that well, but Afrahat clearly does not know Greek, and so all this theological development that happens in the Western Church, that culminates eventually in the Council of Nicaea and all those things, seem to basically escape Afrahat. And so Afrahat is reasoning, one independently, but then presumably, possibly, actually, still preserving some of the older Semitic patterns of thinking, not affected in any way. Now, the moment you get to the 5th century, the Greek thing just breaks in like a flood. And even if you're Eastern Church Father in the 5th century, it's already beginning to sound more and more and more as the West. But I thought that before we go on any further, folks, maybe Andrew, maybe you could tell us, just for those of the students that simply don't know enough about Aramaic at all, give us a little bit of a background on the language itself. You know,
Okay.
anything at all, basic kind of knowledge as to what should a new student of this topic know about Aramaic in relationship to Greek, in relationship to Hebrew, to perhaps other languages, anything, geographical, perhaps anything.
Okay.
Like that.
Well, I'd be happy to. I mean, we
Right.
need to look at the role of Aramaic as a biblical language. Most of the languages that get the most attention are, of course, Hebrew and Greek. But Aramaic has always been a sister language to Hebrew. And the scripture itself points to its role. And I'm talking about in the Old Testament now, in the Tanakh. For one thing, we know that when Jacob and Laban have their confrontation, Jacob has upped his stakes and taken his wives and his children, and Laban has tracked him. And when Laban follows him, he says to Jacob, I'm going to now make a yegar sachadutha, which is a thoroughly Aramaic phrase in the Hebrew Torah, a witness heap, which is even translated by Jacob as galid, because galid means witness heap in Hebrew. Okay? What we find out is that Abraham comes from Ur. Ur is a thoroughly Aramaic-speaking place, although he may have spoken an older language called Akkadian, which is kind of a separate situation. I just want to acknowledge that there is a bit more depth on that side, but we can't necessarily go into all of that right now. But the point is that significant amounts of Abraham's family were Aramaic speakers. For example, we are told that the Israelites had to swear in Deuteronomy 26, verse 5, my father was a wandering Aramean. And that's exactly what it says. It says Arame in the Hebrew. So we see that the Hebrews and the Arameans, they lived close to each other. They were separated by a river. Another great example, when you get into the book of Judges, you get the whole Shibboleth thing. That's happening there in Judges. I believe that's chapter 12. And what a lot of folks don't realize is that when you had the tribes of, I think it was Gad and Ephraim and Manasseh, they're settling on the eastern side of the Jordan. they want to settle first, and then the rest of the Israelites settle later, but they go and join them for war. That's the deal that they strike. The people who are on the eastern side of that river are going to aspirate and say Sibboleth. Whereas the people who are on the other side of the Jordan, who are the Hebrews, and even the word Hebrew means those from across, they're going to say Shibboleth. And this distinction between aspiration on the Aramaic side and non-aspiration on the Hebrew side persists to this very day. So this is not just a biblical folktale. This is a snapshot of linguistic reality. Now we're going to fast forward to the fact that when you had the Assyrians invade King Hezekiah, they had destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE. Now in 700 BCE, they had now put 185,000 troops on Hezekiah's doorstep, okay? And they send a delegation, and the Hezekiah's men come to meet them, and this is in 2 Kings 18, and they say to this delegation, "Speak to us in Aramaic, for we understand it, but do not speak in the language of Judean, because at that time, Aramaic was a diplomatic language. The Assyrians understood it, the Babylonians understood it, and the Hebrew people living in that part of the world understood it. But their hope was, of course, because the majority were still speaking Hebrew, that they wouldn't hear surrender terms be coming across from the Assyrians to demoralize the people that were just speaking Hebrew. However, when the Babylonians invaded in 586 BCE, and Nebuchadnezzar took everybody into captivity, now they've gone into an Aramaic-speaking country. And when they come back from Babylon, the books that were produced in the exile, which is to say Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, have heavy Aramaic influences in them. Daniel is about 1/3 Aramaic, so is Ezra, so is a line from Jeremiah. And so post-exilic, Aramaic is becoming the main language of the Hebrew people. And this shows up when Ezra and the exiles come back under him, and they build synagogues, and they then standardize the learning infrastructure that comes into the time of what we call the Great Assembly, which you gentlemen know very well about that time during the Persian period. The Persians are Aramaic speakers, so Aramaic is becoming, archaeologically speaking, part of the corpus of the culture for the Hebrew people that have returned. Their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents spoke Aramaic in Babylon. They continue to speak it as they come back. And so by the time we get to Messiah, you have this infrastructure set up that if you wanted to pray or go to the temple, you're going to basically do that in Hebrew. But if you wanted to participate in wider Semitic culture, you're going to speak Aramaic. And this is the exact situation that we find when the Gospels open.
So there you go. So that verifies that there was a language called Aramaic, or a language of the people's forefather Aram, mentioned, or Aram, mentioned in Genesis in the genealogy. So we may do another video detailing exactly where in Genesis this genealogy is, Genesis or Brita in the Aramaic, and that he was the forefather of the Arameans, the Hebrews, etc., etc. The Aramaic, as Andrew Gabriel Roth up on the left of this video said, it was a diplomatic language. If you were in the temple, you wanted to enter the temple, you had to speak, or you had to know as well, the Hebrew. Okay, outside, if you wanted to do a wider exchange via the cultural, you spoke the Aramaic. So again, it proves to that naysayer that there was a language called Aramaic. Okay, but if you look at the end suffix ik or ear, and you know it, then you will understand what those two end suffixes mean, which verifies that this language was in the possession or belonged to the Arameans. It came from their forefather Aram. or Aram. Okay. So if you enjoyed that video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel below and give us a like, add your comments, and before we end this video, before you close this video, check that your notification bell is set so you don't miss out on any more of these highly informative videos from the Ministry of the Real Truth, who really strive and do their personal research to bring you, the truth seeker, the believer in the Messiah, the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but that truth. No fluff, no hype, no BS, okay, no bacon sausage. Right, we're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes, and our motto is honesty is our best policy, so we strive to follow those, and we believe in the old chivalry, where your word, a man's word, must exactly be that, and he must stand upon that, right? Defend that at all costs.